I didn't say no, I said for now,
Oh, there's a...
I don't mean everything. I will give back later. I'm sure we have Vagadamus.
No, we have
I would sing good things and 70 some. Now 70s and I was thinking I'll run through just an update in giving you the framework, the status of the Mkhondvo-Ngwavuma water augmentation project, which is actually a program, not even a project. Mkhondvo-Ngwavuma is one of the strategic projects in Swaziland, essentially on who address the issue of poverty alleviation. That's the main focus of the project. So, which means it is directed essentially to addressing issues of jobs and food security. And then, among the midst of all of that, it also addresses things about climate change. This is just to show you that Mkhondvo-Ngwavuma, it's one of the projects ESWADE has been doing over the past many years. Kwaqala emuva lebo 1999 nankhumbula kwakwalidam lakumaguga ESWADE wasuyathunywa ke futhi akabukeke nje abantu lekufanele sibabenefite kulo Maguga Dam downstream. Bekuthiwa iMaguga Dam Downstream Development Program, KDDP. Lapha khona a total of about 5,400 bekumshukela and 600 hectares kulamanye other crops, more vegetables. Kwathi nga 2005 wasuyathunywa SWADE ukuthi asale ayawubuka indzaba yenanganeni asale ayawubuka indzaba yelusipho lendasi bosikofaneni lephana khona still implementing that project. It is in two phases. Phase 1 wawufaka kwakhiwa kwaleli dam uniselo wa 5,000 hectares washukela na 1,500 were alternative crops. And Nyalo, we are working since 2012 on the Lucid Phase 2. Naso yalenda asikbo matata. Yokuma bonzeva. That is Phase 2, one Lucid. Now we are earmarking for that one to be completed by 2024. That particular project, it should already be fully functional. So as I say, Atunya gefuthi sinsway ngoba ngigcoka idolo letinenge. Sithunya ke ukuthi sale sibuka ke nyalo ke le which then comes in lo Mkhondvo-Ngwavuma water augmentation project. Ngitawuchaza as to why we call it an augmentation project. Lo Mkhondvo-Ngwavuma. But in terms of the footage, SWADE, you can see that we work throughout the country. Like the projects have been highlighting. They started up in the north, Maguga, coming down in the middle, most profane in Bolusi. We are now addressing the area that has suffered the most from the drought, which is the south of the country. And then we have sporadic projects all over the country, which we are implemented with the support, supporting the Ministry of Agriculture. Mkhondvo-Ngwavuma water augmentation, it's one of the strategic projects targeted in addressing the issue of climate change. 2016 was a major problem for the country, where we lost about 7% of the gross domestic product in the country because of the drought that happened in 2016. In fact, that is the one that actually sparked the development of Mkhondvo-Ngwavuma. And Shiselweni was one of the regions in the country that suffered the most out of the 4 regions in the country, and to a larger, an extent in Mbo. Then SWADE was how can that be addressed? And that's when Mkhondvo-Ngwavuma was born. The African Development Bank start feasibility study, is this project going to be feasible or not, which then was undertaken. This is the project. I don't have a pointer with me here. It was supposed to be one somewhere. It is in 2 phases, the project. The first phase of the project, let me just go back. The first phase of the project, you want to use the number and then the screen one. Oh, it must be this way. Yeah, slow, so I can't see. Yeah, there you go. The project, say Young, like I said, it covers the whole of the Shiseleng region and it focuses on 2 major rivers in Swaziland. It focuses on the Ngwavuma River, the Crossayo Kumenda Bonso, and it also focuses on Mkhondvo, the last war. So, the first phase of the project, Wakwawale Dam on the Ngwavuma River, which is called the Mpakeni Dam. This is going to be the centerpiece of the puzzle, the Mpakeni Dam. Its aim is to distribute water mainly to the areas. Is to distribute the water to the irrigation areas, which I'll come into. The first part of the area is actually the Ubuda, Losuga from Mpakeni, Ushaibo Sigwe, Ushaibo 19, Yoshabo Maloma, Yoshabo Mkhondvo, all the way connecting both St. Philip's. As you would know, St. Philip's partially is already being irrigated from the Lucid project. So in order so that we have a continuity in coming down. So that comprises phase 1 of the project. So this area is going to be irrigating about 10,000 hectares. The phase 1 on its own will irrigate your 10,000 hectares without any addition of water. It just will rely on water that is available on the Ngwavuma River. So that is phase 1. Once phase 1 is completed, then you will run out of water in Ngwavuma, meaning that you now need more water if you want to irrigate more areas. Then that's where the augmentation aspect comes in. The augmentation aspect entails uthatha emanti from Mkhondvo, not forgetting that Mkhondvo is already being used at Big Ben, the Botamboti, Bolusip, and so on and so forth. By building storage, you are able to capture flood flows. And those flood flows are the ones that you will be transferring. And the idea is that we will transfer those back to the Ngwavuma, so storage and Mpakeni, so that when Mpakeni now can irrigate bigger areas, such as Bosomtomo, Nabo Matsanjeni, the greater Lavumis. There are 2 options at this stage right now. The first stage is the one of the stage, the options is lead dam Lesngalaka and Mahamba Gorge. If we build that dam in Mahamba Gorge, then we can transfer the water through a pipeline. So here just now, if you leave it, the water there, then the water will find its way through the tributaries all the way back to Mpakeni on its own through gravity. That will be the first option. I mean, that will be one of the options we are looking at. The second option is to revisit the dam, that's a Temba, the same Kitsini, Dana Bongwen. So that one, as you would note, so there's no option of gravity. So what we are looking at is having a tunnel through those mountains, so that yellow line there is just the tunnel to one of the tributaries again. And then once you cross the mountains, then you can release the water, and the water will come back to the area, to Mpakeni. And once you have that water in Mpakeni, then Mpakeni has more capacity, and you are able to irrigate now the greater Lavumis. Then that will give you an additional 25,000 for a total of close to about 30,000 hectares that can be irrigated. Now, the project itself, Mkhondvo-Ngwavuma, is divided into 2 phases, as I've explained. Your phase 1, and phase 1 is even a sub-phases now, lang 2. The first sub-phase 1A, bese kulobiwa khona sengulo pipeline besuka la Mpakeni ithathe lamanti iwabhekise Sigwe, Somdong, Sigwe, Bomaloma, 19, Mkhondvo-Ngwavuma back to St. Philip's. That is 1B. Okay. So pictorially, this is how it looks. So you've got Mpakeni there, Ngwavuma yehla yoshone lasibonsoko. So that green line there, you will forgive me, I'm colorblind, I don't know whether it's green or blue. So then the water will then go up there. So these areas, patches of land here, are your high value soils which are being targeted, but it does not mean that we are not irrigating the Amanyama soils. So it depends on the crop that they farm. So, but that then constitute phase 1 of the project. This is the one that we are we are in the procurement process here. So phase 2, we are still doing feasibility studies, which will also be completed this year, where we will know which is the best option for the transfer of water. Is it a Temba, or is it a Mahamba Coach, or is it both? Okay, so that is the phase 2, which is looking at that. It's at the feasibility stage. Now, we are changing the way we have been doing projects. We are now employing what is called the holistic development vision. A holistic development vision is where you are bringing all the sectors so that you don't just focus on the agriculture, you focus on everything that is constituting development so that you can maximize on the development. So the project, which is an agricultural project, becomes an anchor, but then it must then be accompanied by a lot of other sectors that are coming in, whether they are health, whether they are transportation, energy, and so on and so forth. They should all come in there so that we have a full development approach in that. So we are looking at spatial planning for housing and urban development infrastructure. That one will come, will also come the issues of agro-processing zones and industrial developments. So that whatever you grow, you don't just grow and sell, you grow and process, and through the process, the agro-processing, then you're creating jobs. And then that's what they call the value chain. So in order to maximize, rather than just ulime sugar, you can turn it to any other product, whether it's sweet or anything else. But in this case, currently we just go to the primary product and we export it. And then we also forget the development that promotes the integration of other sectors into that. So we're looking at all of those things, and that's it's an integrated plan. We'll be looking at the public infrastructure services such as education, roads, energy, communication, healthcare, and so on and so forth. All of that, or ecotourism through public partnerships. So it is looked at as a game changer here, and we are working with the development partners, including the African Development Bank, to come up with this master plan. This is not part of the project, but this is integrated into the project, but this is implemented by government through the Ministry of Economic Planning in order to bring all the other sectors, and so that imigwaqo ayingasali. Just because we are doing water, then we forget the roads, because roads are a very important component. For example, when you have to transport the produce that comes out of your agriculture. Healthcare facilities, then you end up with urban slums. Some of you may have known areas like Spofaneni, and you can see how sporadic it is coming because of the result of Lucid 2. And because it is not properly planned, it is going to be a major challenge for government downstream. So it should have been, dealt with in this integrated approach. So that's just besides the sign. So let's just come to this project status. Where are we with this particular project? With this project, we got a grant from the African Development Bank for doing the detailed design and the feasibility studies. And then we have engaged it through an international competitive bidding. We got a consultant who is helping us with the designs and the feasibility study. And that company is the Studio of Italy. Like I understand, one of the key issues today is related to the procurement. with these, once you start touching the international organizations for funding, then you are compelled to go international bidding. So everybody has a chance to bid. Not, you can't ring fence and leave it there. Okay, that's the contract sum for all their studies. They are supposed to complete the project in 24 months, which is coming to November this year. It's coming to an end. But all these component 1 and component 2, they are doing it in parallel. In terms of the actual physical work as it proceeds on the ground, one of the critical things that are required by law before you can do any project that impacts on the environment and people is that you have to produce an environmental impact assessment. Again, that environmental impact assessment must comply with the international donor funder plus the national legislation through the ESWADE Environment Authority. So we've completed those studies and we have received the certificate for phase 1A, which is the Mpakeni Dam, which means now we can proceed into construction having addressed all the environmental and social issues that are pertinent for that particular component of the project. In terms of the physical actions on the ground, we are already in the process of relocating graves, homesteads, mainly along the dam wall, where the dam will be built. Otherwise, there's more people that still have to be, and graves and other infrastructure that has to be relocated. Also for the conveyance, the pipeline from the dam to the irrigation areas, we've completed those studies. They are just under review now, and we need to submit those to the ESWADE Environment Authority for clearance, as well as the African Development Bank. So this is just a snapshot of some of the 1A, which is just the Mpakeni Dam. So you can see the number of homesteads that are affected in there, the number of graves that are affected in that area alone. So there's quite a number of that needs to be addressed when we are already physically relocating the graves in the household. Right. Other work that is going on, we're working on the detailed designs, which we have completed now, mainly of the Mpakeni Dam and the access roads and any associated infrastructure, because you have to build the dam first before you can store the water, and then the water can go forth to irrigate the areas that are earmarked for the project. Also for the irrigation areas, the conveyances, that's the pipeline from the dam to the irrigation areas, that one is also completed. Then in the whole process we have then, the government is got into discussions with the African Development Bank for a loan to actually construct the dam. Remember, this grant was for the studies and the design. Now, this now is a loan, it's not a grant, for the actual construction of the dam. So, alongside that, we started the pre-qualification process around 2021. In other words, you don't want to end up throwing out the tender and ending up with 10,000 applicants, and then you have a problem. Even in job interviews, you are aware that you always have a short list. Before you interview only a few people, you don't interview everybody that has applied. This is a similar process here. We shortlist them. And in the shortlisting, there is a criteria that is specified by the African Development Bank, the funder. It covers all kinds of things. The country, the company must be eligible to bid. There are countries that cannot bid because they are barred either by the African Development Bank or they are barred by the United Nations, etc., etc. There are companies that cannot bid because they are barred either by the African Development Bank, maybe because they have done some fraudulent activities, like bribery and things like that. They are excluded, they cannot, and so on and so forth. But this is an international procurement process. It goes side by side with the Swaziland procurement, public procurement regulatory authority. So
in terms of the law and the regulations under the SPPRA, if the project is funded through a loan that is coming from a grant, first you have to follow the SPPRA, but where the SPPRA conflicts with the donor regulations, you are compelled to follow the donor regulations. I hope we were clear on that one. Then, other work that has gone in the process, we have gone through the evaluation for the pre-qualification and it's been completed. And then we have submitted to the African Development Bank. They always require to give you a no objection. In other words, whatever you do, you always go back to them and say, are you happy with this? And that's what they call the no objection. If they give you a no objection, then you are a happy person, because it means you've done everything in accordance with their procurement rules. By the way, you can get the procurement rules from the AfDB website. They are there. They will tell you exactly what is covered in the procurement processes of the African Development Bank. So going from here, we are looking at now beginning the tender process. The tender process, it begins by issuing the pre-qualified firms a request for a proposal. And the proposal will include the technical and the financial component, which they will then be evaluated again, and then you can decide who you believe is best suited to do the job. So that process hasn't started. This is where we are moving to, but it is planned to start next month. And we hope to be done with that process in July. Once that process is finished, then we go into the adjudication, where we look at the proposals and we evaluate them. And then from there, we go into contract negotiations, and then we sign the contract, and we are looking at around September, October, to giving them the site to begin constructing the Mpakeni Dam and the access road. So that's basically what it is. This is just a schematic of the Mpakeni Dam. So what you see there, that's the Mkhondvo-Ngwavuma river going this way. So it starts from this side and it's going that way. So the dam will be just like that. So that's the dam wall. This one is the spillway, but it's perfumlo. That is where, when the dam is full, the water, we don't want it to go over the dam. So we have built it deliberately, a channel, to avoid the dam being washed away. That's what it's called, a spillway. And then we have developments here which will be used by the contractor for now when he is constructing the dam. But when he is done, this is the infrastructure that will be used by ESWADE for the operation and maintenance of the dam long term. Okay. Also around this area, this is where we have said to the contractor, because the contractor is required to build his own clinic in order to assist his own people. We have then instructed the constructor in the bidding document that clinic will be a permanent clinic, which will then be left for the communities for long-term use. In short, once the contractor is done, it will be handed over to the Ministry of Health. It becomes a community clinic in the area. How much is it going to cost? There it is. The dam alone is going to cost somewhere in the order of about 2.5 billion, and the access road is going to be almost 200 million, for a total combined cost of just the dam and the access road alone, almost 2.7 billion. That's the amount. Then in other upcoming activities, you may want to know that, of course, I did not talk about the cost of component B, which is the pipeline from the dam to the irrigation areas, including the irrigation areas. For that, we are working on an investment conference in order to raise funds from the donors. Well, they are not donors because this is likely to be a loan anyway. So that one, we are hoping that by mid-June, that process will begin. We will have donors that are showing interest in funding this component, and then the feasibility studies for component 2 will be completed in November this year. And then we'll take that process again forward to look at how we finance that, how we construct it, and so on and so forth. Chair Lady, I think this is where the brief presentation comes through. We can go into the discussion